Give it a moment for everyone to get in from the waiting room. Good morning. This is an emergency hearing before the Licensing Board for the City of Boston. Today is Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. Today's hearing is being conducted pursuant to certain temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. This hearing will be recorded and will be posted on the City of Boston's website. Before we review some procedural matters, I will introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Joyce. I'm Chair of the Licensing Board, and today I'm joined by Commissioner Liam Curran, Commissioner Kiana Saxon, and our Licensed Premise Unit, Lieutenant Detective Troy, and Sergeant Detective Gallagher.
Thank you. As a reminder, please ensure that your camera is on and that you are able to unmute yourself. I will read each item into the record in the order it appears on the agenda. After that, I will ask who is present on behalf of the licensee. I will then ask who will be testifying on behalf of the Boston Police Department and whether there are any other individuals present with personal knowledge of the alleged incident. After that, all parties will be sworn in. The report will be read into the record. The licensee will have an opportunity to make a statement, followed by questions from the commissioners and Chairwoman Joyce. Calling the Circle Bar and Grill, doing business as The Circle, located at 365 Chestnut Hill Avenue. The date of the inspection was April 16th, 2021. The incident description is failure to adhere to mandatory COVID-19 operational requirements, including parties of greater than 6 patrons. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Good morning, Madam Executive Director. It's Stephen Miller, McDermott Quilty Miller, 28 State Street in Boston.
And is there anyone else present on behalf of the licensee?
George Kariotis, I spoke to him no more than 15 minutes ago, and he was definitely going to be on, but I don't see him.
I think our office talked to him as well. I
spoke to him Sunday, I spoke to him yesterday, and I spoke to him again this morning, Madam Chair. So,
well, why don't we take that item as second call? And we'll move on to the second item, and Attorney Miller will revisit this once your client is able to get on.
Thank you.
Calling Moogie's Sandwich Shop, Inc., doing business as Moogie's, located at 154 Chestnut Hill Avenue. The date of the inspection was April 16th, 2021. The incident description, failure to adhere to mandatory COVID-19 operational requirements, including patrons standing with alcoholic beverages, patrons not wearing masks, employees not wearing masks, and failure to social distance. The non-COVID-19 violations that appear in the police report will be scheduled for a separate hearing. Who is present on behalf of the licensee?
Scott Schaefer.
Is there anyone else present on behalf
No.
of the licensee?
No.
Who will testify from the Boston Police Department?
I will.
Detective Hernandez. And are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
Sergeant Detective Gallagher, if need be.
Any other individuals?
Bill Mills from Boston College. I don't have any knowledge of this particular incident outside of the actual police report, but Steve Montgomery, who does our off-campus patrolling, has had seen larger crowds in that location and people leaving with cans of beer. So I think
we do have to limit testimony for this specific incident to the personal knowledge, but we can absolutely have a separate conversation, Mr. Mills, but just for procedurally, we do have to limit to this incident.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would all parties who wish to testify, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Detective Hernandez, please proceed with the police report.
Good morning. I'll be reading a police report which I wrote on Friday, April 16, 2021 at about 10:42 p.m. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit, were performing checks for bars and restaurants during the COVID-19 emergency. While walking up to Moody's, located at 154 Chestnut Street, detectives heard very loud music coming from inside the establishment and noticed that the lights were also dimmed. As detectives tried to enter the premise, they discovered that the front door was locked. Detectives were able to get the attention of an employee who stated they were having a private party in the back. Once inside the establishment, detectives observed a large group of patrons standing, drinking alcohol, and walking around without any face coverings on. Detectives also noticed that the staff was also walking around without any face coverings. I'm just going to skip down to detectives reiterated the importance of the governor's COVID guidelines and the Boston Licensing Board advisory on the current prohibition of these activities. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Mr. Scott Schaefer. Mr. Schaefer stated to the Sergeant Detective Gallagher that he did not believe that face in coverings and they did not wear any. As a result of what detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 005491. This notice was failure to adhere to the governor's COVID guidelines and the Boston Licensing Board advisory of patrons and employees on walking around without facial coverings, no social distancing. Mr. Schaefer signed for and accepted the notice. That is all.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer, would you like to make a statement about the incident?
Yes, there was no private party that they're contending. This was the last party of the night that came in, and they did come in late. They were, as far as I knew, they were all seating. They were all seated. They were socially distanced. They all came in wearing masks. That wasn't an issue. We had the loud music, and it wasn't.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. What do you mean as far as you knew?
What are you saying? I'm sorry. What's the question?
What do you mean when you said as far as I knew?
What was I saying that you're saying as far as I knew?
You said as far as I knew they were all socially distanced.
Yeah, they were all seated basically with compliance.
What do you mean by that? Were you there?
Yeah, I was there.
Okay, so how is it as far as you knew?
As far as, because we were closing the restaurant was closed. So what we were doing was we played the music, we played closing time to get them to leave.
Do you know or do you not know?
Commissioner Curran, let's let Mr. Schaefer finish his side of the story. Then we can get to your question.
So they were all seated properly in the back. They came in a little late. They did all come in together, but they were seated in a way that was compliant. So what this is as much as I know, but at the time that the detectives came in, we do this to get them to leave because we're required to have them leave by 11 o'clock. So we had played closing time, and we play it kind of loud to say it's time to go. It's time for you guys to go. I believe that is when the detectives came in, and as far as I know, they were all getting ready to go, calling their Ubers, doing whatever they were doing. They all came in together. They were wearing masks, every single one of them. As far as when the detectives came in and they were all getting ready to go, I can't say why or why not they would be wearing their masks. They were just collecting to go, as far as I knew. We had done everything, the restaurant is completely compliant. The health inspector has gone through the restaurant just to say that you guys are, doing what you're supposed to do. So we were really unaware of there being any situation as far as this. I mean, what I'll say is what we're going to try and do to keep this from happening again is we're just going to say after 9 o'clock, you're going to have to make a reservation. So that way we have control of the situation. I mean, we're a breakfast sandwich shop. We're not a bar. We're not a club. We're really trying to deal with this the best we can. And this is what's happening now is very hard to deal with. And for us as well, they come in very large groups.
Mr. Schaefer, why was the front door locked?
The front door is locked, so no more people. We were counting the drawer, and typically when we're closing, you can open it from the inside. It's
Okay.
just we don't want people walking in while we're counting the drawer, and we can actually let them out when they're
Okay.
as they're leaving.
How many staff did you have on that night at this time?
We were closed, so we really didn't have any staff on at that point.
How many staff did you have on? You were
it was
there?
My brother and I, yeah.
Okay. So now we're 14 months into a public health pandemic,
Yeah,
and we're trying to help businesses open up safely.
right. We're trying to comply
These
as
are
well.
unusual Tuesday morning meetings to address COVID violations, and we take these very, very seriously.
As do we. We're not.
This is an additional pressure put on the board. to deal with the COVID violations over the weekend. These are
Right.
not ordinary hearings. You were
Yes,
here because the licensed premise unit found egregious violations over the weekend.
yeah.
It is not enough to say you were closed and you only had 2 staff people on.
It-
And there were people without face coverings. It's your responsibility to ensure that the people who are sitting at the tables and chairs inside your
Right.
sandwich shop, if that's what you're contending this was that night,
Yeah.
are eating food with alcohol,
Yes. they
not
all-
alcohol on their own, and it's your responsibility to make sure they have their face covering on.
Right. It was the end of the night and they were leaving. They
I
had
don't
all.
care what time it is. I don't care.
Okay.
if they're
I mean,
going
I'm
to
just saying they had
Uber.
all eaten.
You're
They
gonna
were.
have to get more staff on to address the situation. This is not unique
Uh-huh.
to you, but it's your responsibility. So are you the manager of record?
Yes.
Okay, and did you tell our licensed premise unit you don't believe in masks?
No, what I told them is I have a medical condition, and it was what was stated is if you have a medical condition, you're not required to wear a mask. I honestly,
Detective Hernandez, were any other employees that night wearing masks?
No, none of the employees were, none.
there,
And he was there with his brother and they did have another male employee working.
And none of them had masks on.
No, ma'am.
So are you testifying before the board today that you, your brother, and the other employee all have a medical condition?
no, me and my brother are both asthmatic, and we have a medical condition, and it really is it's hard to wear a mask when you have that condition.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. We're not trying. We work in the kitchen. We're always 10 to 15 feet away from any customer. If this is some contention, honestly, we'll just wear a mask. It's just we told the health inspector a year ago that we had.
Okay, you're
This
before us
medical
today
condition,
you're
you need to be-
before us today, 14 months into a public health crisis.
Yeah.
For COVID violations.
Yeah.
These are things that you should be aware of as the manager of record.
Well, we talked to
You're
officers
putting
that came
You're
in.
putting your entire liquor license at risk. I have no more questions, but I'm going to turn it over to my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Curran?
I think you addressed everything. I don't have anything to add, really.
Commissioner Saxon, do you have any more questions?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Chairwoman, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion, I see a violation of the COVID regulations. I make a motion to suspend the license indefinitely.
Ooh, why?
I agree.
You'll have to submit a written COVID plan to the, why? You'll have to submit a written COVID plan to the board outlining exactly how you're going to comply with the state and the city's COVID regulations. And until then, until it's reviewed, your license is suspended.
For liquor, for beer and wine. We don't have a liquor license.
Your beer and wine license is suspended.
Okay.
If you would like to make a request to stay open for food only, that request must be made in writing. Please note that this suspension will not be stayed. It must be served effective immediately. We'll also be notifying the district police. You'll receive a written decision. And again, as the chairwoman stated, you are instructed to submit a written COVID safety and operations plan for our review. And you may not reopen until you have written permission to do so from the board.
So, just to be clear, you're closing our restaurant?
Yes.
We've been in business for 25 years. I don't understand.
Okay, so we're going to make it clear one more time. Because of the COVID violations, you're closed until you submit to the board for our review a written COVID plan. So you need to submit to us. You could do it today. 1, you can request to stay open for food only. And 2, you need to submit a written COVID plan. You have to take a look at the state and the city guidelines on COVID regulations and tell us in writing how you plan to abide by them. So that might mean additional staff are required when you have big crowds that come in and your restaurant's closed. You might need to have a compliance crew go around and remind your customers to keep their masks on. This is your responsibility. So you need to take some time with your brother and the other people that are working there and go over this with your staff and submit it to us in writing.
Okay.
You need to understand what these COVID violations are, and you need to understand how, you need to tell us that you understand the seriousness of it and the measures you're going to put into place to make sure you follow them.
Okay.
The board will now move on to the next agenda item. Calling the Circle Bar and Grill, doing business as The Circle, located at 365 Chestnut Hill Avenue. The date of the inspection was April 16, 2021. Failure to adhere to mandatory COVID-19 operational requirements, including parties of greater than 6. Attorney Miller, I see Mr. Karyotis, you're present?
Yes, I am.
Who will be testifying on behalf of the Boston Police Department?
Sergeant Detective Gallagher,
Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident?
Detective Hernandez if needed.
Thank you. All parties, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Sergeant, please proceed with your police report.
Yes, good morning. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, Boston Police, currently assigned to licensed premise unit. And reading from a Boston Police incident report that I wrote on 4/16/2021 at 11:50 p.m. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez of the licensed premise unit conducted a licensed premise inspection of the Circle at 365 Chestnut Hill Ave. As detectives entered the premise, they observed it to be quite full with all the tables being occupied. As detectives moved to the front of the restaurant, they observed the bar to be completely full, with the left side of the bar, 10 patrons sitting next to each other in a row to create a solid line. The front bar had 9 patrons sitting next to each other, also straight line. As detectives moved about the premise into the downstairs, they observed it also to be quite full, with no food apparent on any of the tables. As a result of the inspection, Sergeant Detective Gallagher wrote a licensed premise inspection number 005493, issued to the Circle Pizza for failure to adhere to governor's COVID guidelines. Groups of more than 6. Mr. George Karyotis signed for and accepted the notice. Those essentially are the facts.
Thank you, Sergeant.
You're
Attorney
welcome.
Miller, would you like to make a statement?
Yes, and can I ask the sergeant a few questions?
Of course.
Good morning, Sergeant.
Morning, sir.
Was Mr. Karyotis, and I believe his brother was there also, were they cooperative with you
Yes, sir, they were.
and responsive?
Yes, sir.
Have you been into the Circle in the past several months
We
for
have.
inspections?
Yes,
And at all times they were in compliance?
they were.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Look,
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Karyotis is on. He can explain to you what happened. I mean, he's fully aware of the rules. Both he and his brother are on site basically anytime the place is open, and they're fully aware of what the compliance are. And I think most of, if not all of the customers are aware of the compliance, and he'll explain to you what happened at that point and what they're doing to make sure that it doesn't happen again. George, you want to explain to the chair and the
Yes.
commissioners?
Hi, I'm George Karyotis, manager, owner of the Circle Bar and Grill. So I'm there all the time. We have waitresses, waiters, we have plenty of people on staff, and everybody's telling everybody like to follow the rules. You got to wear a mask, you got to sit down. So we usually sit people 6 per table. We tell them no more than 6. So what had happened was when we sat the people at the bar, I believe that they pulled a couple chairs from another table to the bar. It kind of got a little overwhelming. We didn't see it happen at the time. And if we saw it, we would have corrected the issue. We would have told the people to leave the premises. But at that time, we missed it. We're usually on point with everything. Everybody does eat. My whole staff knows to tell everybody before they order liquor, they have to order a food item, 2 food items, 3 food items, whatever it is, they have to eat something. And we are in compliance with that. And we're always, on top of our game. It kind of slipped away, but we would have eventually got on top of that. Like, if I went to the bar, I would have seen it. I would have corrected it. This is my livelihood. I'm doing whatever I can to make sure that we can survive and everything. And, it was my mistake that, that had happened. It slipped away from us.
I have nothing else to add, just that it's a highly visible location up near BC, and it's been monitored on numerous occasions by the task force, and that obviously the Boston Police or whatever, Madam Chair and Commissioners, and they've worked hard to be in compliance and this is a mistake that I'm sure will not happen again.
Thank you, Attorney Miller. Chairwoman
I
Joyce,
have
do
no
you have
questions.
questions?
Commissioner Curran?
I'm sorry, maybe for Sergeant Detective Gallagher, were there two instances of large groups at two sections of bar or just one? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, there were two. If you look at the bar, it's kind of like U-shaped. And when you walk into the premise, the left side of the bar, like I said, there were 10 stools on the left-hand side. Every stool was occupied. The patrons were shoulder to shoulder in one big group. Then the front of the bar, there was only room for 9 stools. All those stools were also occupied. All the patrons shoulder to shoulder, creating one large group. The right side, because it leads into the kitchen, only had like 4 or 5 stools. Those are also occupied, but it looked like, you know, the old days.
And are they using dividers around that bar?
No, there were no dividers separating the group. It was explained to me by Mr. Karyotis that these people all came in together and that they were one group. Commonly, we'll see a group of 3 with 6 feet between them, but there were no groups. There is plexi between the bartender and the patrons, but there were no plexiglass partitions or separation of stools that we saw for the patrons.
Nothing else from me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can you just clarify, were they masked or unmasked?
They were unmasked at the time. They were all sitting there drinking.
Thank you. Chairwoman Joyce, do you want to make a
Just to see
motion?
a violation of our COVID guidelines, I make a motion for a 1-day suspension to be served on a Friday and for submission of a written COVID plan for our review.
I second.
Is there a
I
second?
agree.
I agree.
The license is ordered suspended to be served on a Friday. And also the licensee is ordered to submit a written COVID plan. You'll receive a written decision as well. Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.